Hey guys, Mr. Thibodeau here. Just coming at you with our history. We start with Lewis and Clark, okay, which is a little bit ahead of where we really are. Since the Louisiana Purchase hasn't actually happened yet, it happens, later in this reading. But it's kind of this American story. Mostly you guys know about this. I don't think and the book does a reasonable job. With my only real issue is right around here. Previously unknown plants, previously unknown animals, Indian tribes encountered. So you're telling me that they're completely unknown animals and plants, and yet there was also people living there. Interesting. Previously unknown to white folks. Oh, it's like, yeah, the native folks have been eating this and using this and doing this for, thousands of years, hundreds of years, but we discovered it. Is it discovery if you just ask a native person hey, what sort of things you got around here? Anyway, whatever. It's how it goes. They should have just been cataloged, right? They cataloged stuff that they hadn't seen before. But Native Americans have been whatever. Anyway, Sacagawea, depends on the pronunciation of her name. Really depends on whether or not her native tribe gave her that name, or whether or not the tribe she was raised in gave her that name. They would all have different pronunciations of it. So it's really actually difficult for us to know how it was pronounced. Sacagawea. Sacagawea is probably how the English pronounce it. They probably were not going to call her Sacagawea. It just because for the same reason it doesn't sound right to us. They probably wouldn't have done that either. So it's possible she went by different pronunciations, both just like an Asian American might have a Chinese name and an American name. She might have had something similar. Not that that's great. It's just sometimes how it goes. Yeah, I think they do a reasonably good job of talking about stuff. Over here, I have my first my second issue with this. So they talk about dueling and how Thomas Jefferson wins Thomas Jefferson wins the election. So Jefferson needed to receive the most votes, and Burr needed to come in second. As it turned out, Jefferson and Burr received an equal number of votes for president. The tie had to be broken by the Federalist-dominated House of Representatives. The House spent 6 days casting votes 36 separate times. At first, more Federalists supported Burr, but Burr's bitter enemy, Alexander Hamilton, rallied support for Jefferson. So it says all of the right things. It just doesn't connect the dots for you. So here it says the final straw for Burr was when he read a newspaper article that quoted some of Hamilton's negative opinions of him. All right. What it doesn't mention is that Hamilton, over here it mentions it, but it doesn't mention it here. Hamilton's the reason he's not president. Aaron Burr doesn't become president because Alexander Hamilton supports Jefferson. Which is crazy. Alexander Hamilton and Jefferson did not get along. And Jefferson and Burr did get along. The whole plan was for them to be vice president. But Alexander Hamilton didn't like Burr, didn't like Jefferson. They really disagreed on a lot of things. But for him to choose Jefferson was a huge deal. They make a big deal about this in the Hamilton play as well. The idea that Aaron Burr, he seemed like he was always trying to be popular, always trying to curry favor, be very diplomatic, but not necessarily be honest. And Alexander Hamilton and Jefferson was always honest. He was diplomatic, but he said what he meant, and it was very clear what he believed in. And Alexander Hamilton generally, in the end, thought that Jefferson would be better, that Jefferson was a better person than Burr. And he says so. And that is the reason Alexander Hamilton was basically the head of the Federalists at this point. And very possible to be a presidential nominee himself after Jefferson. And had there not been, Alexander Hamilton was kind of involved in a sex scandal where his wife was living with their kids outside of New York, and Hamilton was just kind of lonely in New York, and he sort of ends up not only just having a relationship with a woman, but then getting blackmailed by apparently the woman's husband that he didn't know about. And suddenly there was a whole deal, and then people kept thinking the government at the time thought that Alexander Hamilton was stealing or was going to do something fraudulent because they saw him being furtive, but they didn't understand why. So they were worried that he was using his power as the head of the Treasury for something nefarious. And then he's like, oh, no, I'm definitely not doing something nefarious. I'm being blackmailed, and I'm using my own money for this. Here I took, notes and stuff like that. So Alexander Hamilton has to defend his sort of like secrecy by revealing to the other founding fathers and heads of state that he was having this affair. The other folks didn't like it, that it wasn't an approved thing to do, but they generally agreed to keep it silent until it wasn't. Someone ended up blabbing, and so the whole thing came out, and it was a big scandal, which is probably why Alexander Hamilton did not run for president at this point. He was, I think, thinking that he might try later, but in any case, yeah, Alexander Hamilton causes Aaron Burr to not get the presidency, and so Burr challenges him to a duel. Alexander Hamilton accepts. Alexander Hamilton's son, by the way, has already died of a duel. In a duel for a very similar thing. Alexander Hamilton believed strongly in duels, but he also believed that you should be willing to face your death, but you should not actually shoot the other person. That he had no intention of killing. He's just going to aim into the air or whatever. It's just kind of a deal. But he, feels it's important to accept the honor at least. Anyway. Hamilton dies. It also ends Aaron Burr's career because he's charged for the crime. He doesn't go to prison or anything, but it still puts a huge damper on him. Interesting. Jefferson is very, very interesting as a president. I like him as a president, even though, and as much as I dislike some of the things that Jefferson stood for, I do also admire other parts of him. He was a very complicated man, for sure. He would have been more on the side of atheism. I mean, he was a deist, so he believed firmly that God had formed the earth and done things and then kind of backed off. And so he was not a Christian in the way that a lot of people like to paint him today. He's very, he straight up says it in a lot of his writings. But Jefferson was also very interesting because he did not believe in a strong federal government. He thought the state should have more power. But then he actually goes ahead and causes the federal government, he grows the power of the executive branch, the presidency, more than anyone else in early history. He ends up causing the presidency to gain more power, which is the exact opposite of what he said he would do or said he believed. And the reason for that, and I can't blame him for this either, is because Thomas Jefferson was given the option to buy the Louisiana Purchase, okay? Let's see. They don't talk about it until here. So there was no power of the presidency to purchase new land for America. That was not a power that the president had. That was not a power enshrined by the Constitution. And many people assumed that sort of power would lead or would fall to the Congress. That Congress would have to do something like that. But for the Louisiana Purchase, buying that massive sum of land, Thomas Jefferson just went ahead and did it. And that was because he had to kind of move fast to convince Napoleon Bonaparte to sell him that land. Napoleon needs money. France is really struggling. They're just getting out and getting away from all of the troubles they had with the revolution. Napoleon's come to power. But he is feeling like it's just not a good time to try to control this area. Spain was going to control it. He was going to give back some of the land to Spain as a peace deal, or trying to figure out a deal. That kind of falls through. It's too expensive to maintain. Jefferson was worried that if France owned Louisiana, it would interfere with the shipping that was happening in New Orleans. Because America, currently New Orleans, or New Orleans, as it's sometimes called, it was not part of America. Okay, it was a French trading thing, and a lot of American shipping was going through there. Jefferson was really worried about that. Huge amounts of shipping is coming down the Mississippi. And Jefferson really wanted to make sure that shipping was continued and protected. And so using the Commerce Clause in the Constitution, being able to ensure the shipping and the rights of the American businessmen, and specifically the agricultural South, were able to use this Mississippi lane, he purchased all of this. Now, good question. Did the French actually control all of this? No, Native Americans did. The French controlled it on maps, and they had gotten a lot of rights from Native American tribes to trap and to live or have forts there. Okay, Native Americans, the French had been reasonably good with working with Native Americans, actually. Partly because they didn't have the power or authority. There's no way they were going to get an army to the middle of the United States, right? They could have gotten maybe an army to New Orleans, but that was about it. They were never going to march an army into Louisiana. They was never going to take anything. They also didn't really have a lot of people who wanted to travel all the way there and settle in the same way. And so the French relied on treaties, and they sent a lot of individual people over there who worked as trappers or guides or whatnot. But generally, they worked with the Native Americans. This is the only way that they could control the land. When America took it over, the Native Americans were a little like, excuse me, this is our land. We've been living here. So that, of course, is going to be a huge issue. Many of these folks maybe have never even seen a white person. Maybe they've met one or two French people, but they've never heard of anything going on here. The Native American tribes did not have enough contact, so the tribes that are living here and over here had no contact with all of the stuff in the Native American tribes that we're dealing with around here. Okay. Anyway, I think generally it does a good job of talking about it, but this purchase of the Louisiana Purchase is the biggest power grab that the presidency has ever had. Presidents did not have the power to purchase land before Thomas Jefferson decided they did. And nobody argued with him because it was such a good deal. So presidents have the power to buy land, I guess. Jefferson, of course, again, man of contradictions. He really believed that slavery should be abolished, but he also had slaves, and reportedly he slept with them. That some people talk about that as rape, right? Because if you own a slave and then you sleep with them, did they have the ability to tell you no? That seems super suspect. But there's also the possibility that he loved them and they loved him. That's possible. I think that's... I don't know if I would believe that all the time. Just, if somebody loves me, why are they keeping me as a slave, right? That doesn't seem legit. So, really interesting as that goes. Oops, sorry, my lights go off. Let's see. Constitution, judicial review, and the power of the Supreme Court. Very, very important. Okay, as this goes, we're dealing with this stuff even now. Okay. John Marshall is probably one of the most important Supreme Court justices we've ever had. He's a very, very strong and good Supreme Court justice. And very fair, I think. Block commission, yeah. And the court is always looking, to decide these questions. Yeah, so unconstitutional, judicial review, very important stuff we're still dealing with today. New Orleans, Discoveries of Lewis and Clark. Let's see, am I going too far? Where's our endpoint here? 321. I've gone too far. All right. So that's your stuff. All right. Have a good day, guys. Bye.